training procedures changing? You talked about training the trainers. How are those training procedures changing? And
they're not changing. The trainers for the cameras. How do you operate the camera? What's the requirements? When do you turn it on? When do you turn it off? How quick do you need to store the data? How long is the data being stored? So there's a lot of work in this, and training the trainers. Once they get fully trained, they go to the field office with the equipment, and they implement and deploy it and tell people, here's how you use it and here's how you control it.
Are there
So what's the timeline then for every immigration agent to have a body camera?
As soon as possible, if that my way.
So you're satisfied with the training right now of ICE agents? Nothing needs to be improved.
There's always room for that's a loaded question. There's always room for improvement. Things change all the time. FBI updates their training, DEA updates their training, every police department updates their training. Because ICE used to look, you can never be overtrained. I wish there was more training.
I think American people want the answer of when every ICE agent will be wearing a body camera. I know you said as soon as possible, but is there a timeline floating around within?
That's a question for ICE. I know they got the deployment schedule, and I know they got the equipment. That's a question for ICE. I'm not in the weeds that deep.
When will they be required to turn on their cameras? At all times during a traffic stop?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's the consequence if they don't?
More about the quantity of ICE agents over the quality of the agents?
Say that again?
Is this administration more concerned about the number, the quantity of ICE administrations that it deploys over the quality?
I can't speak for everybody in administration, but quality agents are very important. So it should be. You won't give somebody a badge and gun; they need to be the best they can be.
So are there going to be reevaluations then of the hiring?
That's a question for ICE.
Is there any other procedure or protocol on the ground changing? Stops?
There's already, the director of ICE decided that there needs to be at least one body camera on the scene. And again, I'm a big supporter of the body cameras. And as more body camera kits out there, they all have them.
That's the only change.
But let's be clear. You can attack the men and women at ICE all you want. It comes down to one simple fact: these people fail to comply with law enforcement. Even some of the major chiefs in this country, who don't necessarily agree with this administration, says you always comply with law enforcement. But the hateful rhetoric that ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. I see these signs that resist. ICE are let's abolish them, they're fascists. When you keep that hateful rhetoric up for a year and a half, there's going to be that percentage of that left population that it's going to be emboldened to take action because they're not a real law enforcement agency. I should resist them. All they had to do is simply comply with law enforcement. If you don't like what law enforcement did to you, then go to the courts, sue, call the ACLU, do whatever you want to do. But you should always comply with law enforcement. If they did, they'd be alive today. Now, I'm not going to comment on the investigation itself. We'll wait for it to play out. This is about complying with law enforcement, and a lot of the negative, hateful. And I said this a year ago: if a hateful rhetoric doesn't stop, there will be bloodshed. And unfortunately, I was right. Now, I'll tell you something else: it's not over yet. Unless they keep attacking and miscommunicating what ICE does every day, calling them Nazis and comparing ICE to the Nazi regime. Are you kidding me? And I'm not saying the whole country's convinced, but there's going to be that population that's just going to embolden to do something stupid. And I'm afraid that we're going to bury an ICE agent. I'm afraid I'm going to hand another folded flag to a spouse or a child of an ICE agent for simply doing his job. And for any member of Congress to keep attacking ICE and calling them fascists and Nazis, I said it 1,000 times. If they're a Nazi for enforcing the law, what's that make them? They wrote the law. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws they wrote, and that they appropriate us money to enforce. Now, I'll say it once again: if ICE agents act inappropriately or illegal, they'll be held accountable, just like they were held accountable in Minnesota. Everybody, guys, ICE agents are mom and dads too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day to do this job. And it's just not attacking the ICE agents, attacking their spouses and children, and no one knows that better than me. I can't even go get a quart of milk at a grocery store without a security detail. Why? Because I'm enforcing laws in this country. It's pathetic and it's disgusting.
Thank you, Mr.